So we are here to read our poems that we made, and there was a challenge. The guidelines were something like we had to write a poem which was in reference to a childhood memory, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, I thought it was the particular memory of the tractor accident.
The tractor accident
That's what I
memory.
thought.
Okay,
Did you
yeah,
know that?
no, I have a memory from childhood.
Okay.
So we have both written our poems very quickly, and now we're going to exchange them.
Well, we can just look, I think. See what they look like.
Oh, we're just looking at the page.
Yeah, I just want to see that you've got a dark print in 5 lines, and mine are kind of scattered.
Yes.
Okay.
I can see. Oh, okay. So we're just looking at the format.
Yeah,
not
just so
reading.
we can see what it looks like on a page. I think that's important.
Oh, okay. So could you read your poem?
Okay. It's headed by a line from Paradise Lost. Him the Almighty hurled headlong. I am falling backward. Above me, a huge yellow tractor. MM, Minneapolis Moline. Falling, falling. Now the sky is filling with tractors. Green tractors, John Deere. Red, Alice Chalmers. The farm boy falls, a pastoral plunge. Oh, a red combine is whirling, twisting. Like tractors, combines, farm implements, a cow in twister. It is so Magritte-esque, and I am hurtling. Are all of us falling? Where?
Wow. That was good.
Oh, we don't have to give compliments.
No compliments. Okay, no compliments.
Maybe later.
So I did mine in the form of a limerick, which is a form of a poem.
It sure is. Yeah.
So I actually started by Googling how to write a poem. And I got a wiki how, and it said, figure out your theme, right? Like what style, is that what it's called? The style of poem you want to write?
Okay.
So I just chose a style.
Like a form.
A
maybe.
form.
Yeah.
Right. So I chose a form,
Yeah.
and I chose a limerick,
Yes.
which are supposed to be funny, but I don't know if mine's funny. So it might be against the rules.
They're always funny.
This one might not be funny. Okay, so this is called the Coulee. Have you ever heard of a Coulee?
Yeah, kind of a little crick.
Is that what it means?
Is it?
The Coulee, it's called. In summer we played in the mud, in sewers wiped clean from a flood. What treasures we'd find while our parents reclined, exploring is just in our blood.
Okay.
So, not the funniest, but yeah, if you want to look at it, you can.
Okay. Take that.
We'll take yours.
I see. Okay. And you're dealing with a childhood memory rather than the tractor thing. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's okay. No, a childhood memory, just like
Right.
Jericho Brown did.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm starting to kind of see that poems are a different thing. I like your idea that they're just a work of art. That's better.
Just what could be more important? I know to think of it as a work of art.
A thing instead of a book.
It's not an essay. It's not a letter to the editor. It's not a statement.
It's not even really a novel.
It's not a novel. That would be a long story.
I know, but I mean, it's not like
No.
it's something a little bit different
No.
then.
And
Is there something like if they're like Finnegan's Wake? Is that even a novel?
Well, see, everybody wonders about that.
But it's kind of like a work of art too, isn't it?
It better be, yeah. Yeah. But the thing that's dawning on you is
They're more
what
like
we
sketches.
what we just created were works of art.
Okay.
Okay. I would
How fast do you think people write poems?
It's possible. Let's
Like
take
we did these in like 20 minutes.
John Keats used to have fun with his friends, and they would have sonnet competitions, maybe just one other person, and they would had to write they were given a theme. They would give themselves a theme, a childhood memory,
Yeah.
the passage of time, and they would write the sonnet. I think it was 15 minutes. That seems awfully short, but that was a game,
Yeah.
and they would produce these poems in the film, just like we did.
That's cool.
I can imagine the three poems that you looked at most closely. It's possible that it seems like the first two were written. Feels like they were written very fast, like they were just kind of casual. I went to see my friend. I'm a poet, but it's possible he worked on that a whole year.
Yeah.
The last one, the Jericho Brown, seems tighter, less spontaneous. But Chen Chen saying, I told my parents that I was gay 17 times. It sounds so casual and kind of like he's just jabbering away, but it's possible he worked on it for several months and hadn't even put the thing in about Home Alone, stuck that in later. Or maybe Frank O'Hara started with another artist that he visited. And then I think I'll change that to Mike. I went to see Mike Goldberg once, and he was doing a sardine.
Right.
So it's possible he worked on it for a long time, or maybe just pretty spontaneously.
So in your poem starts with a quote from Paradise Lost.
Which
my poem or your poem?
Yeah, yes, mine.
Him the Almighty hurled headlong.
Would you like to? What do you think?
Is that your title?
I think that's a good question. I bolded it to make it made it look like a title, but usually when you put a quote at the beginning, we call that an epigraph. It's not really a title. It's maybe something to kind of reflect on.
Okay. That's
kind of
cool.
Get your mind thinking.
And what's the MM?
Minneapolis Moline.
That's a brand?
They were yellow. The one that fell on me in real life was a Minneapolis Moline. It was yellow. It still is.
Well, I mean, or they still make them yellow.
Probably. I don't know if that brand even exists.
Right. I never heard of it.
It's possible, doesn't it?
And Alice Chalmers is another.
Yes, it was red.
Brand.
Yes.
Of. Oh. Well, mine is. I really did play in sewers.
Yes. I'm going to make a comment here. I think, let's say our assignment was deal with a childhood memory, and you can see how fun a creative writing class should be.
Yeah.
And don't just write about your feelings about anything. I'm going to give you an assignment to force you to get.
Yeah.
And then once you I come up with a terrible accident, and you come up with playing. One thing I'm sensing here is this poem is based on a real memory, and there's nothing that gives the impression that it's not true. And I'm going to read it this time.
Okay.
Notice why the things change. In summer we played in the mud, in sewers wiped clean from a flood. What treasures we'd find while our parents reclined, exploring is just in our blood. Because you're working with a form, and it has to have a certain rhythm, ta 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 ta, and we know where the rhymes have to be. We could see that your creative mind starts to come up with something that you need to fill a rhyme with, but this are what treasures we'd find. Maybe you did find some things, or maybe you didn't, or the people in the poem did. And then you put in there, the parents were reclining, they're resting, but you probably wouldn't have thought of that.
Well, it was because I had no supervision growing up, if you don't recall.
Nicer even. Right, you needed something to rhyme with find.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was the other way around. But you needed
No, I did find.
But you needed a rhyme, but because of the rhyme, the reclined business or whatever, you drew on another part of your life that you were kind of unsupervised.
Yes.
And instead of saying unsupervised, because that didn't rhyme with anyone, it gives the impression that your parents were just lying around being kind of lazy, which is a little stretch. And yet,
Right.
and yet, it's funny that they're reclining.
It's supposed to be where we really did play in the sewers by Guy's
Yeah.
house.
Wouldn't it? Well, I hate to give a suggestion, but maybe it shouldn't be called the Coulee.
Okay.
Well, no. What is?
The Coulee was the name of the place. I don't know why they called it the Coulee. It's at the bottom of that street before Main Street goes under that
Oh.
bridge. It's like right to the right of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Yes,
about?
yes, yes.
Down that big hill if you're coming from Roosevelt area.
In fact, now that I've read it again, it's starting to make clear. In summers, we played in the mud in sewers. Right. We are being told, yes, these were
The flood thing is a
the
stretch.
sewers are where water gets spewed forth, and it was cleaned because of it rained heavily, and so it's being cleaned out.
Yeah.
So that's getting more and more precise of a description of
It's
the
a real
kind
place.
of water. There's mud there, but it's
It's kind of
these
clean.
are where the word coulee to me is a little
It might-
stream.
See, I think I never knew what that word meant. So, because I remember they called it the Coulee.
They actually called it that.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe that. So I would say the word that I'm having trouble with after working on that for 20 minutes is it hurled or hurdled? And I'm not sure. Just
hurled.
like you're thinking about this word coulee and what you're going to do with it. And is it relevant? Is it even necessary, even though you as a memory and your friends and others referred to the place as the coulee?
Right.
So if you showed this
It's
to
not
some
really
of your
a coulee.
friends, they would, like, who did you play with, Guy?
Yeah.
Or some of those other guys. They would recognize it as, they would recognize what this was, probably.
Yeah, they would.
Because they have a association with this word, which is a little bit of a challenge word.
We're at 2.5 minutes left.
Oh my goodness.
So, what is the name of your format, style, form?
I call it free verse.
Free verse.
Right. And one of the questions that I had to think about was the question that Jericho said. The line length is extremely important. Remember remember he ever said that?
The what is
the
important?
length of a line.
Oh, okay.
So I know it's in free verse. There's no rhyme or no obvious beat. And so I'm wondering how long the line should be. It could have been that I would have printed this maybe 2 words on each line to create a greater sense of plummeting down to the bottom so that visually it's looking like a stream of words flowing. But I'm going kind of quickly and like.
And this is from your experience of the tractor
Obviously.
toppling on top of you.
And I'd like to compare these two when I said this poem seems like a semi-accurate description of the real experience. And so even when you said we, it really is Jeremiah and his friends. We don't know exactly, doesn't matter in some ways. On that one, it's not a literal description. It is a surrealistic description of this. So I took a terrible traumatic experience of my youth and I turned it into a dramatic scene of a person falling. And so one of the questions I can imagine if I were in a poetry reading, I might say, like, you're so annoyed by those guys.
I wasn't annoyed.
Well, let's just say I wrote this poem because as I thought about my terrible experience I had as a child, and then what happened? A tractor fell on me, and they're all listening. And then I read the poem, and they're, what the hell was that?
I mean, there's a question of how a person should read a poem, though, too. I imagine.
How? What do you mean how?
Well, like, people tend not to like Stephen King reading his books. They say he's terrible at reading his books. So maybe a poet just can't read well. He's not a performer.
Well, some of them are more than Allen Ginsberg was.
He was good at doing it. But I'm saying not everybody's going to be good.
No.
So
and some would play down.
Isn't the
drama.
word, is the performance important?
Well,
Or
that's a question.
the words seem cooler to me.
I think that's a question. I have to make a comment on this
Yes.
now that we're done. That notice as I proceeded, a theme started coming up that I was not in control of. I started referring to other works of art. A real natural thing. It was only later that I started using the word hurtled and hurled, and that reminded me of Paradise Lost, where God hurls Satan, Satan, the Almighty, hurled headlong down to endless perdition. It's a great kind of a famous line of the drama. He's throwing Satan down into hell. But only later do I get a sense that I'm falling and that I'm like Satan, and that word hurtled or hurled. Then I refer to Twister.
The movie?
Yes. And you know what, you've seen
Yeah.
those scenes.
No, I know
And then
that
I
that was
refer to
good.
Magritte. It shows how arty I am. You know, this person who is speaking is a very arty person, for whatever use that is.
Twister?
Well, no, he's referring to movies.
Pop culture.
Just Chen referred to Home Alone.
Okay, fair
And
enough.
I'm referring to Twister, and that shows that I can talk about that. But it's happening fast because I have these images of tractors falling and grain and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then another one in there that says a farm boy falls. I think that's one of the most interesting things, because farm boy sounds kind of innocent. Oh, he's a farm boy. This was just a little farm boy, and he's falling under and could be killed. And
Well, I
then
remember that. Ugh.
that's horrible.
Well, there was that one kid who had both of his arms ripped off, and then he walked back to the house and dialed 911 with his tongue. And,
Yes.
But then he got in the bathtub because he didn't want to make his mom mad that he got blood on the carpet.
And what caused it?
The power takeoff on a tractor.
That's my point entirely about the danger of farm equipment. There's nothing in the poem that makes that statement, even though at the moment it is a surrealistic image that came out of a real life experience. And then there's even a line, a pastoral plunge. Pastoral is a form that deals with nature things.
I know pastoral.
You know that word pastoral.
Sure.
Pastoral.
There's pastoral paintings.
But
pastoral
right.